So in this video, I want to cover something new we've added in version 2 of our EIA or Evergreen Instance Analyzer application. We'll call this review-based metrics. So we've had in the previous versions metric scripts. What we've done though is we've extended this to cover kind of the timing of when these are executed. Before, metric scripts were primarily used as a way to add additional information about a given item and summarize the data, like the number of times the catalog item's been ordered, number of times a variable sets, the number of items that are in a variable set, etc. Now we're using this as well to kind of build general metrics that we can then use in our findings, as well as just kind of as additional information displayed on the review. So an example of this is, you'll see there's a new drop down now in these metric scripts for whether it's a summary item or review-based item metric script. When it's a review-based item, I have another field here called rule groups that'll show up, which then means anytime I run a new review for this review group, it's going to run this metric script, build out the information, and store it in kind of a metrics table. And also, we'll show you in a minute, this can also be used in the rules themselves to evaluate if something's below a certain threshold, above a certain threshold, or maybe as a way to adjust the finding weight or information. So maybe a good way to demonstrate this is to kind of create a new rule group and a new metric script just to show how this process works. So let me go create a new rule group out here. We'll call this just kind of test group. And I'll just have a new testing rule group. Let's create a new metric script. And instead of summary item, I'm going to call this a review item. And I've got some information I've already kind of got configured here, so you don't have to see me type everything. So I'm going to just kind of put in number of skip changes. We'll give this a description of number of skip changes from previous upgrade. And then I'm going to copy some of my script information and I'll kind of explain what's going on here. So let me say, before I save this, associate this to our test group, and let's save this. So now we've got a metric script that will execute whenever we generate a new review for this test group. And the first thing I want to highlight here is in our script, you will see this kind of instance version of Kingston, and you'll see a mention to properties.instance version. Now this is another change that we made in version 2. I'll show you this on the rules as well, is that we have this at the bottom. You'll see there's an area where you have properties. So a way to kind of define, in this case, the script, and then be able to adjust some of the script kind of inputs or parameters or properties kind of just through some table adjustments here. So I'll show you that. So we're starting with Kingston as the version, but I'll show you we can adjust this to London in a moment. So this is basically going after our upgrade history table, checking for an upgrade from, in this case, to the version of Kingston from a version that was not Kingston. So moving from something before Kingston to something that's now Kingston, going out and getting the number of changes that were skipped as part of that record. Right, so I can kind of run this as a test script. You can see this produced a number of 3 skip changes in my environment. But now let's go actually create a new property just to show you that I can adjust this to be a London-based test. Right, so I'll change the instance version to London as a property. So now what's going to happen is it's going to use this property instance version and run my test using that instead. So now my number is 11. All right, so that's my metric script. Now let's go back to our rule group. Let's create a new rule to evaluate this. So in this case, I'm going to say, we'll call this rule just number of skipped changes on upgrade. Make this a non-table based script. Not going to worry much about the remediation messages, etc. at this point. But now I'm going to copy my script code right here. And so let me highlight what's going on here after I save this. So basically we're calling this check upgrade count function, which is defined below. And this is where you'll see a couple of new things here. There's this EIA utilities, which is has a couple functions that you'll see referenced in here. One is getting a value from an object, so going after our metrics object, which is basically being provided into these rule tests, which is a JSON array of all the metrics that are associated with the review. In this case, go get the value of the number of skip changes from that metrics object. And then you'll see kind of here, again, parameters or properties being used as part of the rule. In this case, a property called threshold. In this case, we're checking a default value of 10. And you'll see here basically our metric of skip changes is greater than 10. Then throw some additional details here to say here's the number of skip changes, formatting that metric, and then also against that threshold, and give an effort as well as additional message, and then return that information. So that's our rule. So now that I've done that, let's also just kind of incorporate a threshold property, just so we can have an easy way to adjust and override this. So maybe I want this to be 8 instead of 10. Right, so that's that. So let's put this to the test here. So we'll go test a new review. Grab our rule group of test group, and we'll run our review. Our review found one finding, which only had one rule in it, right? So that's to be understood. You'll notice there's a metric or summary item metric that's recorded out here. So this is basically those metrics information, right? So it's tied to the review. The value is 11. Right, we got our finding that basically is going to highlight that this item kind of has 11, which is above our threshold of 8. Right, just to also highlight, if we go back to kind of the review workspace, some of the information that's kind of shown up here in review metrics. It's a little different. Is one, you'll see there's now the metrics section here. If there's any review metrics, they'll show up here. If we go look at that finding, you'll see kind of more details about this, right? Skipped is above that threshold value. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover as far as showing you what metric scripts are, kind of how they can be attached to a review, how you can then use those metric information kind of in your rules to test. Hope this was helpful. Thank you.